Happy Saturday and welcome to the Marketing Madmen. Nick Constantino here, and I'm with Jason Sear of Jason Sear Designs, and we are talking websites today. So that's a very broad, overarching topic, and I feel like it's one that's changed so much. So as usual, we're going to approach this from the guise of a complete ADD-addled conversation. We're going to cover as much as we can, and hopefully some of these snippets help people out. So first of all, Jason, how you doing, my man?
Doing awesome.
Good. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you here. So let's just hit it. So AI is the buzzword. Everyone's talked about it. So first and foremost, in my opinion, anyone thinks that the machines are taking over, we are years away from that happening because it still can't even perform some basic tasks. Like this podcast is going to be broken down into text, and I'll have to run 4 separate summaries to get it down because there's too many words for AI to process. Yeah. So the machines aren't rising up yet, guys. So besides that, talk about just in the past year. We're going to start here and we're going to work our way backwards. Talk about how much AI has changed and what your conversations with your clients are like right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me, AI has changed the way that I run my business. You know, I'm a designer and developer, which is kind of a unique combination in my field. You have people who only do design and people who only do development. And what I don't do is I don't write content for my clients. My clients don't want to write content. They don't want to pay tens of thousands of dollars for a copywriter. So with all of these AI tools available out there, you can put in prompts or you can use services that will kind of coach you through the prompts to use. And you can spit out content that you can use on your website. Yeah.
My advice is I go with the first one. If you can, you got to learn how to write prompts, and prompts start kind of writing themselves if you ask for the right things out of it. And I think the concept of writing a prompt should not be something that you're like, oh, I'm just going to write prompts. You should start very simply and evolve the prompts and learn the prompts. And then when you get a good prompt, you should save that prompt and never share it with anybody because that prompt is of value these days.
Yeah. I mean, there's people that's their business is writing prompts for AI. And so where it's really changed me for my workflow, getting content from my clients. I've been doing this for about 15 years. Getting content from clients is the hardest part of my job. And I work with all kinds of companies, whether it's, a single person, businesses, small businesses to, Fortune 500 companies, and getting content is just, that's the worst part. And so if I can tell my clients who, they're trying to run their own business, I coach them through some questions where then I can use the answers to those questions for the prompts that I'll use for the AI platform that I use my day to day.
Sure.
And I can spit out their value proposition. I can spit out, like all the things that I use when I'm building the website, because I don't want to write content.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm not a writer. I'm a designer and developer. So in that respect, AI has been a game changer. And in about a year ago, we have a local meetup group. I'm up in Marietta. We have a local meetup group for web designers and developers. And we had this very conversation about AI, and it was kind of coming to the forefront of what we do. Like, how is AI going to change everything? And, there's, people, saying, well, I think it's going to do this. I think it's going to do that. In 3 months after we had this meetup group, AI had completely changed. There's products now where I can go, if I don't feel like, truly being hands-on with the design, I can go to AI and I can spit out like a wireframe layout for an entire website in minutes, versus...
And you can, in theory, set up agents that will code said website for you if you give it the language and the parameters the right way. Yeah. Not only will it lay out the framework, but then it'll say, if you write in this language code, here's an image of what I'm looking for. It'll design it for you.
Yeah, and it's just... I call myself a developer. I'm not what we would call a full stack developer. Yeah. So I work with the WordPress ecosystem and framework, and I know it very well, and I can do most everything. Yeah. But if there are things that I can't figure out, I have a developer that I use quite often. But I can go to AI and I can say, okay, I need a plugin to do this, this, and this, and I'll spit out code, and it will work like within minutes. So, for my own business, it's really changed the game. But it's a tool that I use for my clients, and they don't want to deal with this stuff. They just want a website that's going to convert and be effective, and I can use that AI tool to help get that goal, reach that goal.
So one of the things I've come to find out, and it started with very simply, I used AI for this show. Mm-hmm. I was using it to build summaries, and I was building all this stuff to help the show. So the way I approached it was very simply, here's a guest, give me topics. Okay. Yeah. And then I go, cool. I don't really care about your topics. I want topics that are good for SEO to make this podcast do well. Right. Okay. And once I started reverse engineering and parametering those and then plugging that back into Google, the show kind of took off because I was not guessing. And what I found was AI doesn't like whimsy. Okay, it doesn't like create. It wants a definition of what you're talking about in the least words possible, so it can build this story.
Yeah.
And that is the hardest thing I can imagine. If someone about their own business, they want to be like adding so many descriptive words, and they talk about emotion. There's no emotion in this. This is a bullet points of the business that you do, and I think that's one of the things that's come true. Now, that being said, I'm also worried that we're taking some of the creativity and taking some of the emotional, like advertising is one of those things. You've always said this. You cannot create and elicit an emotional reaction with data points. You don't know what are the things that people are going to love. If we did, then we'd all be watching TV glued for 10 hours at a time because they know how to wig our brains to figure this out.
Yeah.
Everybody's different. Psychology is crazy. You look at the stock market. You can do every predictor in the world. We have no idea when the stock market's going to crash. Trust me, I've tried. I've lost lots of money trying because I think I know better. So I think as important and as crazy as it is on what AI is doing, I think you have to approach it with the guise of this is a tool that will assist in a task. One, I can't take it personally when it tells me I'm a dum-dum because it tells me I'm a dum-dum all the time.
Right.
It's like, this is stupid. I don't even know why you said this. And I'm fine with it. I'm polite to my AI. I speak nicely. But I think that these different things are happening right now all at the same time where everybody's either using it or they're using it for this. But I don't think we're at a point where people are really building workflows for themselves and how this works within their set of business. So everybody's just racing to do the same thing right now.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to see all in real time.
Yeah, like I said, going back to this meeting we had, about a year ago, with a bunch of colleagues, I really pushed against AI because I want to listen to my clients and build something that's unique, and that's how I pitch my business. Is nothing I build is from a template or canned. Everything is unique. But as I started using it and seeing all these service providers that I use starting to come out with their AI offerings.
Yeah.
It's really truly made my job easier.
Sure.
I have a really cool project I'm working on. It's the Ian Fleming Foundation.
Okay.
And what they do
Bond?
is they catalog all the James Bond vehicles.
I mean,
and
they
stuff like
just
that.
sold. It wasn't the author, but the family who owns the rights just sold them back to MGM. It was like this long negotiation.
Okay.
So did you know this? So,
I did not know this.
Okay, so James Bond, the rights to it were owned by the family. One of the families, not that wrote it, that founded something, and MGM has been trying to get those rights back through Amazon because Amazon owns MGM.
Okay.
And it just happened about a week or two ago that Amazon bought back all of the rights, so they own all the intellectual property associated with James Bond now.
Nice.
So which means there'll be 67 spin-offs,
Right.
45 different Bond agents. Everything in the world is about to go to crap, just like it did when they took Star Wars over. But anyway,
Yeah,
Ian
so
Fleming Bond. Go ahead.
And I will say, a great bunch of guys, super James Bond nerds. Actually, long story, but it turns out the guy who reached out to me is my neighbor. He lives 3 doors down from me. Had no idea we lived down the street. Is the president of the Ian Fleming Foundation. But where AI comes into play with this story is I was doing research and I was trying to find stock photos that I could use because it's really hard to find licensing or images that you can license for James Bond. I used Adobe Stock.
Sure.
I could not tell, and even for other clients, the difference between AI generated images. I mean, there's some that are pretty obvious.
Yeah. It's not good at spelling. It screws spelling. The more words you have on them, it can't get the language right, which is so crazy to think about. It should be the easiest thing, but for some reason, every time I've tried, that's those intricacies it can't do.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a background in photography, so I can kind of tell, with most images where I can, this is AI. But for that project, I was just doing some research and I found some great James Bond images I want to use. And, Daniel Craig, who I thought was Daniel Craig. And, and then with Adobe Stock, you can see if it's AI generated or not. And, and that was 8-9 months ago. And I was like, man, dude, AI is getting so good with stock photos and, all these other things. And so it's definitely been a game changer. I was pushing against it, selfishly, but it's a tool that I have to embrace. And it's a tool that my clients are going to have to embrace because, we were talking before we went on air that, it's affecting search, it's affecting SEO.
Yeah.
Where I come in for SEO is I focus on technical SEO. So I don't do the on-page stuff. I hire somebody out to do that. But, coming up with the title tags, meta descriptions, alt tags for images and all that, those are things that you need. But there's these other factors that are coming into play that, if you do a Google search on the SERP page, search engine result page, the first thing you're going to see is their AI results. And I saw somebody on YouTube said 95% of traffic to websites is just going to tank because what it's doing is it's farming that content like it did you know, traditionally.
But it's doing it without the influence of advertising, supposedly, because eventually that's going to change also. But it's doing it without the influence of the advertising dollars, which is what Google has been so anti-Google, is because it's so influenced about those advertising dollars.
If they can monetize it, they're going to monetize it.
They're going to monetize it.
You know, at some point.
Yeah, so. It's crazy. It's crazy interesting. And I think the biggest part of it is like it doesn't seem to be people in the middle. Like you're either really in the camp or you're not in the camp at all. There's very few people like dabbling in the middle, and the ones that dabble are the ones who don't they can't understand the concept of prompt writing. They wrote it like, this is stupid, didn't give me what I want. Well, to make my prompt for this show took me probably 300 tries to get to the prompt to which I needed, because I learned the things that I needed for the show to succeed. Now I get experimental. I go, has anything changed that I need from you that I am missing? And it will literally say, this is something to think about. Like Spotify is big into video now, so it'll actually tell me those things, which is crazy to think about it. And then it's really hard for people that are not technological people to understand the concept of having a conversation with a machine, because that is what you're doing.
It is very
It's what
weird.
you're doing. You're having a conversation. You are saying, please. You're saying, you know what, I want it, but I want it a little bit more this way. And again, the machines are not rising up yet. It doesn't understand context. It doesn't understand emotion. It's really not good at it. Like I've even tried to be like, I need to get more empathy in this, right? And you write it, and you're like, this now sounds fake.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get those things.
What AI model are you using?
So I rotate. I use Copilot because all my stuff is Microsoft. Okay. So it's built into Excel, which really helps me speed up the workflows that I have to do. Okay. But it's not as good as GPT-4. So I'll go over to ChatGPT also to it. But you know, my AI agents, I'm using AI agents, but I'm using them because I think people are going to eventually use them, and I'm trying to figure out consideration sets for the products in which I'm trying to do, to be a little experimental. And even there, they're not quite there yet in my thing. They kind of screw up a lot. They speak to themselves. They're not giving you the parameters. Like, I'm not an expert. I'm like, that is a really bad choice of what you just did.
Yeah.
So anyway, I did that on purpose, by the way, because I wanted to completely throw you off and skip, not even talk about websites, and just you have the AI conversation. So we're going to get back and we're going to actually talk about websites. You've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. Nick Constantino here with Jason Sear, and we went crazy with our AI conversation, but we did it on purpose because it is at the root of every conversation happening across business, across marketing. So we're going to rewind a little bit, and now we're going to have the kind of practical applications thought. So you said you've done this about 15 years.
About that, yeah.
Talk about the development, because everything kind of goes in waves, right? There was the original foundation where you just needed a website, right? Decent navigation, make it easy, links. Then we started getting into okay, now Google is this moneymaker. We got to start playing Google's game. So that was really the SEO. That was where we started working within their parameters. And now you see that it's still dominant, but you're seeing it switch now to the AI revolution. So I may have summated it quickly, but give a little bit about the evolution and the stages of evolution you've seen, and how we've entered kind of this new phase of this all.
Yeah, so, you know, when I first started out, 15 years ago, which both at the same time seems like forever ago, but also seems like it was yesterday. And I was just starting to, to get into this. I would always tell my clients, you have your static pages, your About Us page, your home page, your services and all that. But to really be to rank well, you have to have dynamic content.
Yeah.
Blog 3 times a day. The blog has to be, 3 times a week. The blog has to be X amount of, characters, all this stuff that Google was telling you, and, SEO pros were telling us. And my clients, they could barely, they barely had time to run their business. Yeah. They're not going to write 3 blogs a week, to try to compete. Then that eventually started to evolve into, what I started to do, and when I say eventually, I'm talking, 5, 6, 7 years when I realized I wasn't interested in doing the actual content, like writing the content. I had SEO professionals that would do that. It started, working towards the social proof model where, reviews are really important. If you sell widgets, you need to have reviews on your website. Google reviews, local SEO optimization. If you have a service area or
and a lot of this was Google's way of countering fraud also, because those things became real because people just didn't. Then they had AI write reviews, and then they started to have verified purchases, and then anybody can make an email address. So everything seems like it's kind of a give and take to adjust. And look, everyone, what Google's going to tell you is we want to make it more fair, but what they really mean is we want to find a way to make ourselves more money. So like you see those things, but again, I think if you look at it holistically, it makes sense the way this is all laid out,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think really all Google's trying to see is if you're worth a damn or not.
Right.
Because they want people to be engaged with their platform for as long as possible. So all they're trying to say is like, do other people give a crap about what this is going on? Is it layered and laid out well enough that it's organized?
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to figure this out in real time. And again, it's this ebb and flow versus the creators, the content writers, but then also about the people who are trying to beat the system or make these false promises or do all these things. Like, I remember one of the things that for the backlinks.
Oh, yeah.
And what do? Well, you just run a machine and it's going to make you all these backlinks, right?
Right.
Is it really? Because then if everyone's doing it, how does Google want everybody to just do the same thing?
Yeah.
So I think, and that's kind of what I'm getting to. Talk about the relationship with Google. Talk about as you're designing websites, like, are you Google certified? Are you trying to outthink it? Talk about, because I feel like at some point it's just like, you got to give in.
Yeah.
It's frustrating, but that's when I think this show started doing really well, when I just started giving in and saying, you know what, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Let me just work within their parameters. And I hate that I had to, but talk about that relationship.
Well, I mean, I'm going to tell you, the way that I design and build my websites, I don't really care about Google. I care about the person who is going to land on that site and converting them into a client, because that's what's going to matter for my clients. Now, of course, you know, I do focus on the technical stuff. Like, I follow best practices for the technical SEO, and you know, the technical SEO are basically things that you must have on every page. You know, that the search engines are looking for. But I really, and this is 8-9 years ago, I really stopped just like trying to force my clients to really pay attention. You know, you have to have your content written by an SEO who truly understands how to write the content to get the search engines there. I started focusing on, I started asking my clients, how are people finding your website? Most of them are direct traffic, whether it's, they're getting referrals from other clients or whatever. When they land on your website, are you telling them where to go, how to get there, what you sell, like what's the call to action? What's the value proposition? What does success look like if they use you for your service or whatever? So I take an approach where I tell my clients, I say, okay, I'm going to do all the things that we need to do for the technical side of SEO. I'm not going to tell you that you need to go spend another $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to have a copywriter write you content that is specific for SEO, because that almost doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. And what I focus on is the local SEO optimization.
Yeah.
And so it's making sure you have a Google My Business page, a Facebook business page, making sure that your phone number, your name, address, everything is consistent, because those are things that Google has said that matters.
Yeah.
And most recently in the last year and a half, and especially the last 6 months, is reviews.
Yeah.
Google reviews, Facebook reviews. You must have testimonials, reviews on your site. And these things appease the search engines, but more importantly, it's for the human that's visiting the site.
Yeah.
And to me, that's really more important. I've gone on websites where I can clearly see whoever designed and developed this website or wrote the content, wrote it for the search engines. It does not speak to me as a potential client or customer.
And I think the hard part is it's got to, the reason I do a balancing act. So the role that I'm in now, you're talking, man, I mean, hundreds of thousands of website visits. You're talking about a brand that's been around for 40 years.
Right.
You're talking about, but at the same time, so the way I try to tell people this is the brand, if someone asks me what's my 30,000 foot view of this brand, and again, it's only been a month, but it is, I want to use the techniques and tactics of e-commerce, but I want you to get your ass in store.
Right.
Okay. And there's a couple reasons. Number one, you can't see a diamond sparkle online.
Right.
So you'd be out of your mind to buy something as important as a diamond online. You'd be nuts to do so. We're not there yet. Two, the process of buying a diamond is so different for everybody. You need to go meet with somebody that either knows how or knows how to sell you. There are certain things in life you should want to be sold. That's why real estate agents exist, right? If there wasn't, there'd be an open, you could just buy a house, easy breezy. But real estate agents exist because you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And realistically, nobody has a clue how jewelry works and how diamonds work. So we are trying to use e-commerce tactics to bring you to a website, but give you just enough to whet your appetite to bring you into store.
Right.
That's a clear vision, not an easy vision, but so a lot of the tactics and techniques we use are more about, like, you want princess cut. Well, that's a stupid cut of diamond, but I can't tell you that, so let me give you the princess cut so you can find out about it. But really, we want you in store to tell you how no one on earth is buying princess cut. So I think what I'm trying to do with this is very specific, and while I do have to play in those things, ultimately, you're right. When you're on that site, are you more likely to buy or less likely to buy? And if it doesn't, then it doesn't matter. I don't need the traffic to have traffic. I need the traffic to vet out who's the right customer and get them in the store to purchase something.
Right. So I just saw something the other morning that FreshBooks, so kind of like a QuickBooks competitor, they increased their sales by 20% just by having testimonials on the homepage.
Yep.
Social proof. Like I want to know who I'm doing business with. I want to know if they have a good product or good service. My wife, my family, and I would travel all the time. If we're in, we go out west every year. If I'm somewhere and I want to eat at a restaurant,
I'm a Yelp guy. I'm a Yelp guy personally.
Yeah,
I go to the place. I do the nearest ones.
Yeah.
And I'll pick a restaurant because of reviews in a
100%.
Yeah,
100%. So, there are definitely. You have to, if you're a business that's just starting out and you're not getting any traffic, most of my clients don't even have analytics. They don't even know what kind of traffic they're getting.
Okay, that helps me understand the phase you're in, because what you're talking about, I'm not saying it's easier, but if you're not looking for 1 million customers, it's easier to ignore the Google stuff because you're word of mouth, you have a business card with the website on it.
Yeah.
So because to me, I am a fond believer of look, organic search and direct are how you can tell how successful a business will be. Right? I like Google Trends, all of these things that you can't BS your way through it, right? None of this matters, right? If you're the SEO guy and organic search is going down, is it because the competitors are doing a better job, or are you not doing it? There's no other way to do it, especially in a high barrier to entry industry.
Yeah.
So as you look at it, that's why I'm asking. Is like we see 50% of our traffic is direct search and organic search, right? And for me, I'm like, look, guys, that is because they've been on radio and mass media and TV and magazines for 40 years. So my conversation with my digital people is that they're like, oh, you should spend more money in digital. I'm like, you should thank the Lord that he was doing the stuff that made you look like you're good and it's not tricking me anymore.
Yeah.
Like you're succeeding because he did 40 years of brand marketing. Stop pretending like you're doing this. So those conversations are hard, but it's true. And as you design websites, what is the end goal? My end goal for a website is as simple as can be. Does it reflect who we are as a company? Does it reflect the call to action to which we want to have happen? And does it make sure it recaps the positive experiences? And if it does those things, then it's accomplishing its goal. When you deal with your clients, what are they trying to get out of the website? What is the number one thing that they're like, this is what success looks like?
The majority of my clients, which are service-based clients, is to get that initial lead, that initial contact. We were talking about one of my clients who is, arguably, well, not arguably, I mean, I could tell you by metrics, she is one of the best dietitians in the Atlanta area. Very, very competitive area. And so when we were talking about how her business model has
probably, if you don't mind asking, probably competitive, low barrier to entry. There's a lot of them, and you don't need a lot. You don't need capital to really start, right? You just need clients. You need the advertising, but you don't need to go spend $1 million on inventory.
Right.
You don't need those things.
It's a service provider,
which makes it competitive.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And they're just, it's like attorneys. I mean, we're in such in the Atlanta area. I mean, we're such a congested area for a lot of these services, right? So how do you make yourself stand out? Yeah. So for her, when I took on her website years ago, she is on local media, national media, radio. She gets the visits. But she wasn't getting the conversions.
So it's more of a curated experience.
Right.
The curation. You're taking the big people, putting them in a net, but making sure that there's something catch-all that brings them to the next step and the next action.
Yeah, and so, and like we were talking about, off air, is that her business model has changed so much in the last 6 to 12 months because of these new drugs that are out there for dietitians or for diets, whatever, Ozempic and all those. So her current website, we're working on the revision right now, is that her current website has all these call to actions and services about what she offers and what she used to do, get a lot of business from. Because that business model has changed so much in the last 6 to 12 months, now we have to rewrite, the content, the calls to action for now the new clients out there, the people who are taking these medications and have, complications or, what, it's just really changed the, the landscape of her business. But, for most of my clients, it's, getting that person who goes to the website, turn them into a lead. And, there's a couple of different ways to do it. And most, statistics out there, most people who come to your website the first time, they're not going to become a lead right away.
Yeah. You got to be moved down the funnel.
Exactly. But most websites out there, go to any website and just see what their call to action is. Okay. Schedule a free consultation.
Yep.
Or how many times do you see that throughout the website? You might see one button up in the navigation.
Yep.
I am putting that.
Yeah, that's call to action. There's got to be a clear and tangible thing to get out of it.
And most people don't do that. Yeah. So if I want to, buy your widget, I want to hire you to do whatever, but I don't know what you do, I don't know how to hire you or how to contact you, then you've lost me as a client. So, To your point, yes, I want, when people come to my clients' websites, I want them, the first thing I want them to feel is that they have somebody who understands the position they're in, okay? I've used this example before. I used to have a few clients who, they were defense attorneys, okay? So they were, like, their bread and butter were DIY cases, okay? Yeah. Not a very, pleasant topic, but if I get a DUI and I go to an attorney's website, I'm doing research for a website, I'm freaking out. I have, you want
the easiest way to get a hold of that person.
20 to 30 seconds is what you have on average to capture my interest.
Yeah.
I just want to know, can you solve my problem?
Yeah,
and how do I contact you?
For sure. So there was an attorney, Ray Giudice. He's now retired. Ray, if you're listening, we miss you, bud. He was actually on the show, and he gave his cell phone number out on public radio for 40 years.
Good.
And he just crushed it in business. Because he said, when you are in that instance, you don't need a receptionist, you don't need a website, you need me.
Exactly.
Me. And even if he didn't answer it all the time, because he's probably in court, there's a million variables, but that call to action is a real call to action.
Yeah.
And word spreads, because someone finds out that he answered, you're more likely to answer. I think you're right. And I think the problem is we've gotten so distracted with KPIs that we're not worried about call to action.
Yeah.
And we're so worried about, the HubSpot account says these leads all came in. Well, what did they do afterwards?
Exactly.
I don't know. Well, then how's it of any value to me? Because the problem is it's easy to cheat nowadays, right? It's easy to get fake reviews. Mm-hmm. It's easy to pay to get fake followers. You can pay for all these things. That's part of the mechanism that makes it so hard. So what is the call to action that you want them to accomplish? And then they get really defensive when you start challenging them. Like, I'll give you a great example. So I'm dealing with something now where ultimately they are doing a lot of branded keywords, okay? Mm-hmm. So they are just capturing people that are already searching Salomon Brothers. And it's like jumping from the top of the mountain and be like, look how much we achieved. I go, how? How are you achieving anything? All you're doing is capitalizing business that's already coming to you, and you're getting a high click-through rate and a low cost per acquisition, but they're already searching for us. So I don't understand how that's an accomplishment. But we've gotten so distracted with KPIs and metrics that we don't understand call to action. Are you reminding them how to get a hold of you and why they need to?
Yeah, and that's why the way that I position myself, if I have a client coming to me, is that I want them to be successful in that if I build you a website, I want your business to increase, whatever that metric is you want. Our church that we go to, I'm going to be building their new website, and our pastor wants to increase the amount of people that come to church by 20% over the next year. Okay, well, how do we do that, right? So he has a metric. If I talk to a business, we want more business. Well, how much more business do you want?
What kind of business? Where do you make your most margins? There's more questions to ask than I want more business.
How are you getting your business now?
Do you want real leads? Because one of the things I've always felt like leads are messy, right? Google, if you just want leads, they'll get you leads. Right. But what if you wasted all of your resources closing leads at a 1% clip? Then those leads are worthless.
Right.
Would you rather have 1,000 leads and convert 100, or 10,000 leads and convert 100?
Exactly.
It's easy to know.
Yeah.
But again, we're so distracted with these glamour metrics. It's this evolution of the internet is just everyone thinks that they can just trick their way into it or spend money their way into it. I just don't see it happening anymore.
Yeah, I mean, my clients ask me if they, should be, doing other marketing campaigns or, spending money in places where they really shouldn't be spending money. It's like, well, like a restaurant client, like how much money have you spent on quality photography for your business? Mia, who put us in touch, I met her years ago. I had a client up in Marietta who's a restaurant.
Shout out Mia.
Yeah, Mia. I haven't seen her in years.
She's downstairs.
Is she?
Yeah, she works the Warrior Line. She's downstairs.
Okay.
Make sure you go say hi.
She's a phenomenal photographer. And so I actually met her. I had a client, a really high-end, not high-end, but a really nice restaurant in Marietta Square. Classically trained French chef. The food was amazing. iPhone photography on their website.
Yeah.
Horrible photography. Actually, I don't think I have photography on his menus, but so he contacted me to build him a website.
Yeah.
And I'm like, here's how much I'm going to cost. What's your budget for photography? It's like, well, I dabble in photography. I'll just do that myself. I'm like, please don't.
Yeah.
And hiring a legit photographer like Mia or quality food photographer, it completely changed his business.
And it's so funny. Look, don't get me wrong. Phones are great. Okay, all this is great. The lighting is the problem, and nobody understands how to light things the right way, because what you're lighting a restaurant for is traffic in a restaurant. You're not lighting it for photography.
Yeah,
the best case scenario would be you blacked the whole freaking thing out and came in with actual lights and took shots.
Yeah,
that's the problem. It's not the photography. The phones are great. Like if it's a clear, perfect sunny day outside and you want to take a photo, any camera phone you have is going to do the trick. But when does that happen?
No.
When are you shooting with perfect lighting? It's never happening.
The texture looks, it's horrible.
Yeah, we're about to launch an episode. I don't know if you know, because Mia brought him, Mike Moon. He was actually a photographer for the Marines, and he was their photographer and their journalist, and he talked all about lighting. We did a whole freaking episode on lighting. I've never seen someone geek out about lighting the way this guy did. But again, what I've come to realize is you could spend all the money on the most high-end camera in the world, right? If that room is not lit, and it's the same thing with sound. You can spend the best microphone in the world. These are not even right angles. This room is sound aligned for perfect sound. That's why it sounds good. You can't cheat these things. We spend so much time trying to cheat these things. You cannot cheat these things.
Right. So to your point, it's like, okay, I can build you a website that's going to look awesome. It's, I'm going to help guide you. I'm going to coach you through getting the right content, the right copy and all that. That to me is much more valuable than telling you that, okay, you need to spend tens of thousands of dollars with me to build a website. And then, oh, by the way, you need to have a copywriter write all this content to appease the search engines. And oh, by the way, you need to have paid advertising, paid marketing. That's the way that I operate.
Yeah, and that's a chicken or the egg thing, right? So for me, yes, you should always be doing paid advertising if you want to grow your base. If your website is built to receive it. Yeah. If you have the technical parts of the website down, like I can't tell you how many. It's been my whole career. I used to meet with people, and they used to be like, "Oh, I can't spend money right now. I need to go do SEO. I need to do this stuff," and I would fight it. And there was a point about 10 years ago where I was like, "Oh my God, I don't know why I'm fighting this. How are they going to find me if their SEO and their biggest competitor is just stealing all their traffic?"
Right.
So you need those things to be aligned. Then you could spend money, but without good photography, without sound principles, without clear call to action, what is the point of getting your name everywhere? And that's where people do it wrong. They feel like it's the website. Look, I think websites need to be thought of as operational expenses, not marketing expenses. That's rule one. That's not a marketing expense. That is an operational 100%. Line item. If you don't look at it that way, and I think, to be honest, SEO is also, right? SEO is not, it is not maybe it's lucky if I have this. It is a functional part of business these days.
Yeah. And that's, so I'll give you another example. This was a long time ago, maybe 10, 12 years ago. A friend of mine, I knew when I used to live out in Utah, he moved to LA and had all this funding to build this massive CrossFit gym. This is when really CrossFit was like at its pinnacle, right?
Yeah.
It was like a $250,000 budget to build this CrossFit gym. Okay, so he reaches out to me. They're about to
That's a lot of tires to flip.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they had the best equipment, money could buy, whatever.
But the whole purpose of CrossFit is to not need that much stuff.
Well,
you're supposed to be.
This is LA.
Yeah,
this is in LA.
Right.
This is in LA.
All right.
So, so he reaches out to me a couple weeks before they're supposed to open. It's like, hey, can you build this website? I'm like, sure. Our budget is $1,000. I'm like,
total.
I'm like, you're killing me. Absolutely killing me. And he was a friend of mine, so I did him a favor. But it's an afterthought. It's like you're this new location in LA, which, if you point to a map, there's 20 other CrossFit gyms within a 5 mile.
Who are putting exorbitant amount of funding behind this. Who have look, this is really hard to explain, and I wish all business. It takes one of two things. It takes time or money. Mm-hmm. Are you willing to put the time to learn to do this yourself? No, then you got to pay to do it. I had a buddy. He taught me how to use WordPress. I designed my own site for this show. And what he started explaining to me was, look, WordPress has SEO built into it. Mm-hmm. So when you do your blog posts, which all I was doing was taking these episodes, putting videos, all these different things and putting them out, he goes, as long as you're scoring this, wait till you see what happens. That was his only advice. So what I started doing was I started learning how to write blog pages for SEO.
Right.
So if I've done 100 episodes and I have 100 blog posts, Google thinks I'm a freaking expert. And I haven't even started promoting yet because it is putting all this content. And nowadays, YouTube, part of Google. So they're starting to factor that into it all of a sudden. They're seeing the voice of a podcast that gets 100,000 downloads. So all of a sudden, it's a voice of authority. So you see this, but I have no agenda for the website. People don't even know it exists. I just started doing it to do it.
Yeah.
So it works for me. But if you want to open a CrossFit gym in 2 weeks with $1,000 budget, you better do a training course to learn how to do this yourself. It doesn't work that way.
Well, that's another big part of my business are the people who they think that they can DIY it, and that's where I really try to sell my clients. I'm not the most expensive, I'm not the least expensive. It's just me, so I'm not an agency. I don't have overhead or very little overhead. So I try to price myself to be very competitive, for small businesses because I'm a small business.
Yeah.
When I started, I had expenses and all this stuff. A lot of my clients will come to me and say, "Well, I tried it on Wix. I tried it on Squarespace.
Yeah.
I thought I could be a DIYer." It's like, well, you have a business to run. If you're not going to it's one foot in or one foot out. or you can't have one foot in, one foot out.
And there's not a ton of web designers coming out of college these days. We've passed that bandwagon. They're all employed. They're writing AI prompts now.
Yeah.
So you can't just think you're going to hire somebody at 30 grand to build a website. The world doesn't work that way. I can't find them. If you know some, please send them my way. I'd rather do that than to pay the freaking amount of money I'm paying my web designer to do a bad job.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing is for me to tell somebody that your website that you built is absolutely awful. It's doing nothing for you. Had a potential client reach out to me last week. They're importing wines from Croatia. One of the only
Croatian wines are good wines. Man.
Yeah, and as far as I know, they're the only ones in the Southeast. I used to have a client that she was the only one. So yeah, we built this website. Can you come and kind of finish up the e-commerce part of it? So they give me the URL, I look at it. I'm from Boston. I can be pretty blunt, but I also try to kind of
soften it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm like, your logo is this. It's garbage. It's 5 paragraphs of why somebody should buy your wine. And so,
so let me just throw this in here, and I want to go to break. But one of the things I found, like when you conduct business that way, the only sensitivity is price, and you're making yourself a race to the bottom because you're commoditizing the service which you have, right? If you're saying this is Croatian wine, it's cheaper than Italian wine, you should buy it. Great, there's a business for that. But if you don't have scale, then why are you killing yourself to do business? People want curated experiences, whether they like it or not. And the only way you curate experience is to have pictures of Croatia and explain the different places. And hey, do you know it's right across the street, the Mediterranean Sea from Italy? Like, they need that curation, and a website does a good job of it. But if not, all you are doing is creating a commoditization, and your price is the only sensitivity. So go sell on Amazon. If you're the cheapest, people are going to buy it. Doesn't mean you're going to make any money. So that's a good note to leave it. You've listened to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and we will be right back. Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. Nick Constantino here, Jason Sear, and we're gonna finish this conversation up with some more practical advice for listeners, because we haven't done a web design episode. I've seen good ones, I've seen bad ones. It changes so quickly. Like you talked about, dynamic content was huge, and I'm not saying it's not big now. That's why a lot of people are doing podcasts and video, because those are fit into these algorithms. But what are some things that just you're seeing them when you're doing design? You're like, how are people still making these mistakes? What are some examples of, even if it's technical, even if it's just, what are some mistakes that keep popping up that are really detrimental but hard for people to comprehend?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I see really, and you asked me for some horror stories, I'm trying to think, but it's people just putting too much content on their website. USA Today, I don't know if they still have this. Years ago, they used to have the tagline, an economy of words. And when a client comes to me and say, hey, we have this website, can you help us update it, or, build us a new website? And I go on there and it's 5-6 paragraphs long about why I should use them for whatever it is they're doing. I don't have time for that. You have 20 to 30 seconds to capture my attention and anybody else's attention. Why do you have this much content?
Does that frustrate you? Because one of the things that AI is the best at is condensing words. It is one of its best strengths is you can put 6 paragraphs in and say, hey, make this SEO compelling in 3 sentences, and it will do a pretty damn good job of doing that. I do that.
I use that. I mean, so when my clients don't want to pay for somebody to write their content, I am coaching them and I'm asking the right questions, and I'll, plug it into to AI and spit out something and, kind of mold it and, caress it a little bit to make it and polish it a little bit better. But, I mean, really, it's so much information. That is, I guess, probably the biggest mistake I'm seeing. Brevity, in my opinion, is key for a really successful and effective website. Not having a plan, saying I need a new website and not truly understanding your client. What I've been really good at the past few years is helping my clients develop client personas. Yeah. Pre-COVID, I had a client, not a very sexy industry, but he sold nasal spray. Yeah. And when we were developing his website, I sent him an email, asking him, who's your client? Yeah. What is your client, right? And I was trying to, develop or find stock photography and all that. So he sent me an email. It was really short, but it was something like, it's a married woman in her late 30s. She drives an Audi. She makes 6 figures salary, and like all these like just weird details. I thought he was messing with me. And
how about somebody who has allergies? Wouldn't that be a good photographer?
That too. But so I started asking him about it, and actually his company had won an award from Burt's Bees, whatever, and he did like this 3 or 4 day marketing boot camp, and one of the things that they did was develop a persona for who's buying his product, and that was their persona, super specific, seemed very silly at the time, but knowing that, like I think one of the things with, she does yoga, whatever. So knowing that now I can, find stock photography. I can help develop content.
You also know that those people are more likely to spend at a higher margin. So there are things that go into the process that at least you didn't. And again, if that's the only person, that's actually an easier thing to market towards.
Yeah. And so, my frustration with a lot of clients is they don't understand their client,
those egos.
And it's like, if you're not understanding who your client is, it's no surprise to me that your website has not helped you, has not really been effective. And so I think that's one of the biggest thing, and that's really a business thing, but they're still not, they just don't understand their clients, and they don't have the knowledge to really understand what to put on their website.
Yeah.
And so it's just a hodgepodge of whatever. The other thing, and I mentioned this to you, off air, is that I use the story brand framework from Donald Miller as that is how I design my websites. And without going, I could go into it for a long time, but the whole story brand framework is positioning yourself as the guide. Okay, so your client has a problem, and you're their guide to help, solve that problem. And so a lot of websites, a lot of people, including myself, before I started doing the story brand framework, was talking about yourself. I have 30 years of experience.
You're not acknowledging the problem that they have first. It's not about them.
Yeah, exactly. I can do this. I can do that. I can do whatever. And so now what I do is I have my clients out. We develop the persona, and then I start coaching them through the whole story brand framework, and we're positioning them to sell their product or service to help a problem that person has when they come on the website. So it's all the websites. I don't have any specific horror stories, but it's really just too much content, too confusing. Too long to read. You're no calls to action. I don't know what to do. I'm on your website. I got a problem. I don't even know how to call you. You fill out a form that's either super short or 10 pages long. It's either bad advice, or they DIY'd it, or they just had a designer who built the website but didn't really truly understand the psychology. I
think curation, and I'm going to keep going to this, people like a curated experience for everything that they do in life, right? We're in a very high-end part of the world. There's a lot of money. People don't want to just go. Nobody wants to go to a restaurant and just see 6 things and get a burger. They want to be curated. They want the chef to put together this exquisite meal with all these pairings and all this stuff. I think when you think about it, you have to curate it for those avatars, right? Because if you know that the avatar 1 is a female, then don't put 6 dudes on the front.
Exactly.
You have to curate. So you have to understand who your audience is, how to curate for them. But I think one of the other problems is that the way I try to set up most of what I do is short, medium, and long form content that is based on the different parts of the sales funnel. So you start with branding, right? All you're trying to do is hook people. 60 seconds. If you think you're putting more than that, no one's paying attention to you. That's the TikTok generation. All you're trying to do is grab their attention. You're just garnering attention. It's what you do in the shortest thing, a nice thing to catch their eyes. The mid form is for the people in the consideration set. They're trying to move down to the purchase. So that is more longer form, still brief, 3 minutes, 2.5, 3 minutes, but that's taking what their problems potentially could be and giving them solutions. The longer form. Once you get them to the longer form, this is pure call to action time. So this is the service, this is how you do it, but you're still putting it to them as content. You want to make them think it was their idea to call you, not you telling them to call you. So if you follow that way on a website too, each page, so your main site, quick to get their attention. The next page is some content based and the next booking appointment page should be the one with the most information. Because if they've gotten to this point, they are likely to make a purchase, or at least more likely to.
No, I think you're right. I mean, the TikTok generation, I, for one, am not a TikTok user, but I, scroll through YouTube Shorts, look on Instagram, videos. We have such short attention spans now. We're all trained to scroll, and if you don't capture that person's attention within that 20 to 30 seconds, even less, really, it's not going to be effective, and it's not going to work. And so
But I think people are also nauseated by that. They don't like that they're short attention spans. They don't like getting in these dopamine drips where they're sitting there looking at an hour of Instagram being like, I just wasted an hour of my time. So I think you're right, and I think you have to play to it, but you also have to give them the option to learn a little bit more and maybe learn about you. And I think that's why what you do in the community is so important nowadays. Right. I think the about us page without nothing about you is not a good look either. Tell you about your family. People want to know that they're buying from somebody that they know or they trust. These communities, if you're involved in a community, that should come out because people want to see if they're in your community, they're more likely to buy from you.
My father-in-law is he's retired, but he's a very successful business owner in Marietta. And one thing he said to me years ago really resonated with me is that I built a website. My own website is horrible. Like I don't practice anything I preach. And when I think it was like the second iteration of my website when I started my business, did not have a picture of me. Had like nothing about me. I mean, I had an about page, but there's no pictures, whatever. He's like, when I do business, I want to know who I'm doing business with. I want to see who you are, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, having, a good about page, videos convert very well. I know, when I'm surfing on the web and if I'm looking at a product, if I see a 45-second to 60-second video about how your product is going to make my life easier, whatever problem is I have, that's going to convert better than, I don't like to read. I don't like, if I have to read more than a paragraph, you lost me.
But that being said, if you're about to spend a couple grand, 10 grand, you're going to read and you're going to make sure you do it right. So just to get their attention is a different thing. Yeah. Look, I think this has been great. So we got about a minute left. End with a good time in the business cycle to realize that they need somebody like you and how they can get a hold of you.
I mean, if you have this website and you've spent all this money on a website, or even haven't spent that much money on a website, and you're not seeing the conversions, you're not seeing, if your business is just doing okay but could be better, then it's really time to evaluate, is your website working effectively for you? Do you have the right content on there? Are you, are you doing the right things off your website, Google reviews, Facebook reviews, and that kind of stuff? I think it's time to evaluate your digital strategy for sure. A lot of people, their business is just doing okay, and then when it stops doing okay, then that's when you start freaking out. You need to make those decisions now
in advance. So how do they get a hold of you if that's the case?
So my website is jasonseardesign.com. You can email me, jason@jasonseardesign.com. Go to my website and reach out to me there. And I work with nonprofits, small businesses, big businesses, large businesses. I do a lot of different work for clients and definitely help them. Yep.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad we got to a website design episode. I think it's pretty clear these days what's a good one and what's a bad one. So go poke around. If you find something you like, imitation is the finest form of flattery. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. And you've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and we'll catch you next week.
Now I got to launch my new website. When's this thing going to air?